What would happen if the Fed lost control? Perhaps they already have. Well, I'm going to show you the details you need, beginning with the central bank activities, and I will connect that in directly with what's happening in the economy because I'm telling you right now, these two are interconnected more than most people realize. Look, reducing inflation is likely to require a sustained period of below trend growth. This is according to Jerome Powell. What's he saying? Below trend growth. You're not going to get what you had previously. And by the way, the trend line had been broken in previous cycles too. But that's besides the point. While higher interest rates, lower growth, and a softer labor market conditions will bring inflation down, they will also bring some pain to households and businesses. So we can watch as this really escalates and how that impacts the individual. They're already taking a hit. Right now, 2022, they've just started their interest rate hikes. And yet, we're seeing the same situation going on. I mean, it's unbelievable that just a little bit in their tightening has affected the economy at this time. It is surprising to me, and I watch this every day. Look, you could see the central banks, 80 of them, have hiked interest rates this year. And basically, the further we go to the right, the darker orange, that's the more interest rate hikes, 500 basis points plus hikes. And there are some countries that have done that. But the point here is that on a global level, most countries have decided to increase interest rates. The exceptions are the People's Bank of China, as I talk about all the time, and of course, Bank of Japan, who have committed once again to continuously destroying the currency and then the economy because they will not give up. They're not going to give up. They're not going to turn that around. Okay, so from the ECB, both the likelihood and the cost of current high inflation becoming entrenched in expectations are uncomfortably high. In this environment, central banks need to act forcefully. They need to lean with determination against the risk of people starting to doubt the long-term stability of our fiat currencies. I thought that was interesting. That quote to me is very interesting, the way it's worded, and it's coming from the ECB. Essentially saying, if we do not calm inflation down, if we do not get interest rates up to a certain point, and if we don't have confidence, well, then we are going to lose their confidence. They're not going to have that anymore. So we need to have a backbone, we need to stand up, and we need to actually take care of the solution. But some are starting to suggest, maybe they've figured it out, that you can't necessarily just flip a switch and make things go away. Just like they can pump cash out, they can't specifically direct where it goes. If you start to make markets really liquid, it's not going to for sure go into one place or another. It could go into more riskier assets or value and so on. You can guess that, but you never really know. And now we've got some interesting situations. I'll talk more about that in a second, okay? There's many different individuals from the ECB, from the Swiss National Bank. For instance, there are signs that inflation is increasingly spreading to goods and services that are not directly affected by what happened in 2020 or what's going on in the Ukraine, right? That's happening all over the place. The head of the IMF, she said US inflation will persist for at least another year or two. And that means essentially above 2%, right? I'm assuming that that's really what she's trying to highlight, above 2%. If that's the case, where would Fed funds rate have to be, right? It's going to have to be above 2%. So that means it needs to remain elevated from what we've been so used to, and that's going to be for a little while. Whether it's going to be 2024, 2023, who knows? But we know that inflation right now at this time is much higher than what people want to see. Central banks cannot hope to smooth out all economic air pockets and must instead focus first and foremost on keeping inflation low and stable. Monetary policy needs to meet the urgent challenge of dealing with the current inflation threat. one after the other, whether it's from the biz in this case here, whether it's from the IMF, whether it's the ECB or Jerome Powell at the Fed, they all had basically the same message. There's always going to be nuance and so on. But I think it's really wild. The story is pretty clear. Inflation is much too high. And so the answer in a situation like this is obvious. This is what central banks have to do in a situation like that. We have to raise rates. Okay, you get the point. If you want to read the article, link in the description below. You get it. They're doing this. Never in recent economic history, at least since the 1980s, I think, has the monetary policy narrative been as important as it is right now. The evolution of inflation and what the Federal Reserve is going to do about it is going to be the driver for global markets for the next 12 months. So you can understand the heightened interest. This is happening right before our very eyes. We are watching each and every nuance, and my goodness, it is interesting. Okay. And then, where I want to shift right now is this. When inflation has a fiscal nature, monetary policy alone may not provide an effective response. To show this, we ask whether tightening monetary policy earlier on could have prevented the increase in US inflation. The increase in rates would have resulted in only a modest reduction in inflation at the cost of large reduction in output. This large sacrifice ratio arises because when inflation has a fiscal nature, the central bank is not uniquely responsible for its reduction. But that's where things get iffy. So what they're trying to say here is basically, we looked at a fiscal side, which basically means the government pumping out the cash, but it was both. And don't forget, when you bring interest rates down and you pump a lot of money and you start to have literally children that are talking about, the next hot stock and crypto and all this stuff, the money has sloshed around. The money has made its way to people who, are just going to be tossing it away. It wasn't something that was wise, in my opinion. This article, small businesses feel the pinch from slowing housing market. And they're using the example here, basically cabinet makers. They're not doing what they're seeing right now is, by the way, the lead time used to be much further out. Okay, we can't get to you for 2 months. Now we can get to you in a few weeks. At the same time, they're not doing whole kitchen remodels. They're just refacing their cabinets. Okay, so you just replace the doors and you get a brand new look. So people are cutting back on costs. So in fact, what you see with interest rates is having a direct impact. The prices of the homes were going up like crazy. Hey, let's do it. Let's have a fantastic time. And now that changed. Suddenly, people have to spend more money to get the same job done. Prices are elevated. Interest rates are higher. The economy is a little bit sketchy. I'm going to back out. No, thank you. I'm going to do just the bare minimum. That's what's going on right here. Okay. And now we look at something that everybody should keep their eyes peeled at. Take a look at this, and it's something that is of great concern. Dried out farms from China to Iowa put pressure on food prices. U.S. crop tour reveals the damage done by severe drought. Lack of rain is also taking its toll on Europe, China, and India. We have a very big problem. If suddenly all the crops that everybody are using are now dried up, are now under flood or whatever it might be, some sort of weather problem. Because it's not as if you could just print money and fix it, okay? I don't know about those dollar bills, but it's probably not too tasty. The world's rivers, canals, and reservoirs are turning to dust. There are many examples. If you have a minute, watch this with me, okay? You can see here, waterways have dried to a trickle thanks to droughts and heat waves. Look down, look. You'll see this. This is California. 2011 on the left-hand side, 2022. Unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. And what's interesting is they're starting to unearth a lot of things that were in these rivers, which is unbelievable. You could see that here, just showing us through Europe. The Rhine River is the one that I've talked about many times before. They couldn't even send cargo through it. I don't know about any more, but that's one factor. And Po River, you can see right here through Italy. I'll show you that in a second, but I just wanted to give you an idea of where it runs before we go down. Look at this. My goodness. This is in France. It's so dry. There's no way they can't bring anything through. What do you think that does to the prices? This is Romania. Okay, quickly. I just want to move quick. Netherlands. These are boathouses, by the way. I know they're on land right now. These are boathouses. It's crazy. And you look at this. It's in Spain. Completely dry. Hungary. Italy. UK. I mean, we just go on and on. There's the Po River right here. We'll stop there. If you want to check it out, link in the description. So this is going on all over the place. And it will definitely impact the prices that you pay and inflation on the, the actual inflationary numbers. When you look at those figures, they're going to stay elevated for a while. What does that mean? Interest rates need to stay elevated for a while. Forget showering. It's eat or heat for shocked Europeans hit by energy crisis. I mean, it's so unfortunate to read something like that. No more ironing, limited oven use, and showering at work. Europeans are trying to keep their energy use down, but the bills keep climbing. Just reading it is a little tough, but ECB must be determined, but avoid brutal moves. Another significant step on rates could come in September. So they're going to try to get inflation down, but obviously, if there's a weather event, that's not going to bring it down. But there are so many things that have caused the inflation to go wild, right? It's not just one thing, but we know what's happening underneath all of it. Same situation in what I covered before, looking at the ECB and how they want to increase interest rates, get inflation down. There's so much going on here. There's the geopolitical factors too. Iran and Russia are cementing an alliance with grain, drones, and satellites. So these two countries have been hand in hand, just like China and Russia, just like Iran and China. And so what they're doing here is they're collaborating. They're saying, hey, we're basically all sanctioned. We're all, or at least considered to be rivals. And so we'll do deals. And that's something that could really come up when you look at what's happening with the BRICS nations, setting up their own reserve currency. They're setting up all kinds of infrastructure in between them. And we know what's happening to the US dollar long term. So if the US dollar starts to lose its reserve status, this could be very damaging for that whole system, the whole system. It would be quite shocking, to say the least. Okay, I'm going to end the video there. I want everybody to take note of everything we discussed today, looking at how interest rates are so important, how the money printing is so integral to what happens in the real economy, and then we can see it affecting everyday lives. Get your situation in order. Power, food, water, take the actions necessary today, and hopefully that you'll be able to weather the storm. Okay. If you haven't already, if you found it informative, you definitely want to subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.